Welcome everybody. Welcome to all our viewers throughout the world on TorahAnytime.com. Okay, wonderful. So happy to see you all. Again, for those that are watching on Torah Anytime, I'm very, very sorry that you don't get to benefit from the sushi, but we invite you to come in person and you could devour. We'll save you some sushi as well. All right, but until then, you're going to get the thought, but not the food. You have food for thought. So this week's Parshas Terumah. Torah says in Parshas chapter 25, verse 1, Parshas Pasuk Aleph, Vayidam Hashem Moshe Lamer, God said to Moses, saying, "Ta'ar b'nei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, v'yichlu li Terumah," which literally means, and we're going to dissect this in a moment, but let's analyze. Take a donation. Now, is that proper English? It's not proper Hebrew either. It should say God is asking, God is building the tabernacle. The tabernacle is God's abode on earth. His resting place is glory on earth. Can you imagine? Something supersonic, something extragalactic, something from outer space. It's more than that. This is from the highest realms. This is from the spiritual, not the physical universe. Even the eons and light years are still within the physical universe. Talking about something that is outside of the physical universe. Something totally spiritual coming down, the tabernacle. You are building the tabernacle. So God says, in order for the tabernacle, in order for in order for the tabernacle to exist, right? They need money. That's why we're having the campaign this Tuesday, right? So God said, I'm also having a campaign. All right, you double your donation, God says. No, with God, it's more than doubling a donation. So he says, okay, so build for me a tabernacle. But in order to do that, God says, take a donation. He's going to take a donation. V'yichu, which is say, v'yitnu. V'yitnu, give a donation. What do you mean, take a donation? That's the first question. The second question says, take li, for me. Take for me a donation. What does it mean for me? Again, it doesn't seem to be grammatically, the syntax, the grammar seems to be lacking here. It should say, give a donation. V'yitnu Terumah. You collectively, v'yitnu plural, you Jewish people, give a donation. It says, take a donation. For me. What is this all about? And the commentaries explain that when you think about giving a donation, most of us think about it in a totally wrong way. Say, I make an income, I make my salary, and now I have to give some of that salary. It's enough I have to give, to Uncle, what's his name?
Sam.
Uncle Sam, yeah, it's enough I have to give to Uncle Sam. I have to pay taxes. But even more so, you expect me to give charity? That's my hard-earned money. That's my blood, tear, and sweat. What do you want from my life? You know how many hours I had to put in to get that paycheck? You know how much training I had to go through? I had to get my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and my dissertation, and my hypothesis for my doctorate. And do you know, I gave everything for that. And I have to wake up at the crack of dawn and run to the train. And you want me to give some of that hard-earned money? God says, you got it all wrong. Your money is not your money. What do you mean it's not my money? What is it, socialism, communism, Bernie Sanders? What's going on here? What's going on here? Oh boy, it's going to be a really, really big mess. If Bloomberg or Sanders, that's going to be they're going to have the field day with the Jews. Not really good, not really good. Anyhow. So what do you mean? God says, no, you got it all wrong. You think it's yours? You have nothing. Anything you get in life is because I willed it. What do you mean? You willed it, therefore I have it? That's called emunah. That's called faith. We Jews believe that we deserve nothing. Nothing is coming to us. The fact that we have anything is because of the good grace of God. And without God, we would have nothing. The fact that we were able to go to school, the fact that we were able to have brains, to be able to learn something. Now, I was in a hospital today, unfortunately, and I saw people that were incapacitated, that were debilitated. I saw people that were afflicted with different types of diseases, and they can't use their minds. And it reminded me the blessing of the fact that we have minds, that we have faculties, that we have aptitude, that we have cognizance, that we have awareness. That we're able to think, we're able to rationalize, that we're able to do things coherently. It's a blessing. Don't take anything for granted. God says, I gave that to you. I gave you the skill. I gave you the ability. I let you get into school. I let you forge ahead. I let you make sure that you don't despair, that you don't give up. I gave you that job. Don't think you just got it. And everything that happens is because we have a loving Father who takes care of us, who's there for us. So God says, if you have money because I willed it. It's not yours. It's mine. I entrusted you with that money. And therefore, God gives us an assurance. And He says that when you give charity, you're not giving, you're taking. Because you're benefiting. For example, if I go ahead and I put money in a fund, let's say I had enough money to invest in a fund. Today the Dow went all the way down, right? Very dangerous, very scary, very, very scary. I think it plummeted more than ever. But let's say I told you I had a fund. I'm not Bernie Madoff, God forbid, right? I told you I had a fund, and I told you invest in this fund, and you're going to get dividends. It's going to skyrocket. It's going to be astronomical. It's going to go all the way up. So would you think that you're giving me something? No, you're not giving me anything. What are you giving me? You're getting an assurance. You're getting a guarantee that you're going to get something in return. All right? It's the same thing. God says, when you give tzedakah, you're not giving, you're taking. And that's why God uses the word, take a donation. Don't give a donation. Take a donation. Because when you're giving a donation, you're getting so much more in return. Now, why does it say, Li? God says, do it for me. Why does it say, do it for me? So, Li, Rashi says, Lishmi, for the sake of my name. What does it mean, for the sake of my name? So some say, based on the Talmud and Tractate Psachim, that when the temple was built, the tabernacle was built, they were able to say God's name, which is the tetragrammaton, right? The Yud, Hey, and the Vav, Hey. We don't pronounce it. We don't pronounce God's name. The Gentiles do. They say, like the witnesses, the right? We're not allowed to say that. And it's bad. It's sacrilegious to say it. But they used to pronounce it in all its glory in the temple. So that's what God's saying. If you build me the tabernacle and you put the donations together and build it for me, Li, you're doing it for me for the sake of my name. That's what it means, Lishmi. Because you can be able, that's because the Ksanos are. That's his commentary, that's what he says. Because now you can be able to say God's name in the full glory. God willing, when the third temple is rebuilt in Jerusalem, we're going to actually be able to say God's name. We're very, very excited, looking very forward to that. Okay? Bez Hashem. That's very, very special. However, I want to share with you something beautiful. I want to share with you an amazing interpretation. And that is that, first of all, when somebody's asked for charity, I've experienced it, where I made a phone call, not even on behalf of myself. Let's say on behalf of somebody calls me and says that they're in dire straits and they lost their job, and so let's say I make a phone call. I've experienced where people have been so mean and cruel, and they hang up on you. That's not the way to behave. It's a horrible way to behave. Terrible way to behave. That's not how a Jew is supposed to behave. That's how a human being is supposed to behave. If God gave you the ability to help others, you have to try your best to help others. Now, you may not be able to give exactly what the person asked for, but give something. Give something. Don't make the person feel humiliated and ashamed. It's a terrible thing to make a person feel humiliated and ashamed. Do you know that it's akin to murder? The Talmud says that shaming someone, they say, well, he called me when I was in the middle of a business meeting. So why did you take the call? You could have put it to voicemail. The person could have called you back. You have no excuse to shame somebody. You have no excuse to denigrate somebody. When you go up to heaven after 120 years, they're going to say, you're a murderer. They say, me, a murderer? I didn't kill anybody. If you shame somebody, it's like killing somebody. Can you imagine that? It's a terrible thing. So you have to understand that it's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful ability to be able to help others, to be able to be kind and benevolent. I think I once told you, there was a guy that told me that he didn't want to write out a check. He once had a campaign a few years ago, and he didn't want to write a check, and he was very obstinate about it. Finally, he wrote out a check, and later that day, there's an amazing story. It's 100% accurate, 100% true, because I heard it firsthand from the person. Later that day, he was on the highway, and his car was totaled, and he came out, unscathed. Didn't have any injury. He said because he wrote the check. Tzedakah tatzil mimavis. Charity saves you from death. That's it. You want to be saved from death? Everybody's worried about the virus coming. The biggest guarantee you could have to protect yourself from germs. Somebody told me today that she's not taking public transportation anymore. No more trains or buses. She's afraid. Okay? Listen, I'm not going to tell her what to do. You know what I'm saying? But you give tzedakah, that's the biggest guarantee for protecting yourself. Okay, now let's go further. So what does it mean, li? God says, give for me. So the Mefarshim say it means give with sincerity. No ulterior motive. Don't look for plaques. Don't look for applause. Don't look for accolades. Don't look for recognition. Don't look for acknowledgement. Give it with your heart. Give it because it's the right thing to do. As a matter of fact, the word tzedakah, you know what the etymology of the word tzedakah is? Tzedek. You know what tzedek means? Just. We don't give tzedakah because it makes us feel good. That's not why we give tzedakah. We don't give tzedakah because we could afford to give tzedakah. We give tzedakah because God says that's what part of being Jewish is all about. That you have to give tzedakah. You don't have to give everybody $1 million. Give one person $1, one person $1 million, whatever. But part of being Jewish means being just. And tzedakah, the word tzedakah comes from the word just. You have to be just. It's not about feeling good. It's not about getting honors. It's about doing the right thing. Now, there is a question about if I'm allowed to have a plaque that says my name. Let's say I give a nice donation, and I'm allowed to hang up a plaque in the synagogue or in the, wherever it is, that says, Mr. Joe Schmo, he and his wife, Helen, they together endowed this center for Jewish continuity, whatever it is, right? Allowed to do that? So the Rashba has a tshuva about that. The Rashba says if it's going to inspire others to want to give, then you should advertise it. You should publicize as much as possible, because then you are galvanizing and you are being the catalyst for other people to give. However, if it won't make a difference, then the best way to do things is modestly. To give charity as anonymous as possible. So I'll never forget, we once had a guy who was an orphan, and his mother didn't have any money. The father, unfortunately, did not buy a life insurance policy. I encourage everybody, by the way, especially if you're married, to buy a life insurance policy. It's very, very important. Because many people, they don't get life insurance policies, and then they die, and they leave behind a family, and then everybody has to beg for money, and it's not the right thing to do. You buy a life insurance policy, it's not that expensive, it's a few $100s a year, and God forbid if something happens, you're protected. The family's protected. Whether it's $1 million policy, whatever it is, they're protected. Not protected so much, but they're protected. It's something very important. So we had this kid that we knew that he didn't have any clothing. Really, he didn't have a wardrobe. So we didn't want to make him feel bad and make him feel like he's getting handouts and like he's a second-class citizen. So you know what we did? We made, you'll never believe this, it's a beautiful thing. We made a raffle. And there was a contest. And we fixed the contest. The contest and the award for the raffle was like a $1,000 gift certificate to a clothing store. And now, everybody was in on it. So, because if everybody's not in on it, and they, let's say, pay for the raffle ticket, then that's stealing. Because then people are giving, thinking that they may be the winner, and even if the chances are very slim, statistically, it's still considered to be thievery, to go ahead and to beguile anybody. So everybody has to be in on it. As long as everybody's in on it, it's okay. So, or if it's a raffle that no one invested in, that they didn't pay for, right? That's also okay. So he won the raffle. And he had no idea, and he felt like $1 million. And, that's why the verse from King David says, Ashrei maskil eldol. Praiseworthy is the person who thinks about how to give charity. Not just who gives charity, but thinks about the most befitting, proper way of doing it, so that the person doesn't even know that he's being a recipient of charity. You're doing it in such a glorious and magnanimous way that the person doesn't even feel in any way that he's like your little specimen, or your little guinea pig that you're helping him out. So that's a very, very beautiful thing. Okay, so now it says like this. It says that when you give the charity, it has to be given with all your heart, with total sincerity, with nothing else. So I want to share with you something that you may find astonishing. You won't believe this. The Vilna Gaon said that when you build a synagogue, now God willing, over here, we're going to be doing, we're doing, God willing, building, because thank God there's going to be renovations and expansion. So this is very relevant. The Vilna Gaon says when you build a synagogue, he says even the shovel that you use for the cement, he says if that shovel wasn't made in purity, it means that you got it from, let's say, the wrong source or something, you stole it or something like that, he says then that synagogue, he says the prayers in that synagogue will not be sincere either. That's what he says. Imagine this. Like, this is very scary. Very, very scary stuff. Because it shows you have to be full of integrity. Even the construction of the place has to be done with total honesty and total ethics. Otherwise, it jeopardizes the whole entire prayer service. Furthermore, there's another source. And the source is from Maram Shik. Maram Shik, his last name was Shik, but really his name wasn't Shik. Shik is an acronym for Shem Yehudi Kadosh, which means a Jewish holy name. Because in his time, in Hungary, there were many Jews that were taking on aliases. They were taking on Gentile secular names. Right? So a guy Yaakov turned his name into Jack. Right? And a guy Levi turned his name into Ludwig. Right? And somebody that was named Chanoch, he became Henry. And all these different types of names. So he wanted to preserve. He felt that Jews have to preserve. Somebody showed me today an amazing thing that I think it was either CNN or New York Times had a lead article online of the coronavirus, and there was a picture of a radiologist. This is on the front page. He's wearing a yarmulke, and he's showing a CAT scan of a victim of coronavirus. And it just happens to be, they weren't profiling a Jew at all. It just happens to be that the prominent radiologist that was showing a CAT scan of how the coronavirus influences the physiology of the system happens to be that he was wearing a yarmulke. Amazing, Then you see, like, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people see the guy with his whiteboard showing the CAT scan, and he happens to be wearing a yarmulke. It's amazing. So Rabbi Shik, his real name wasn't Shik. Shik stands for Shik Yud Kuf, Shem Yehudi Kadosh, the holy name, because he said, don't change your Jewish name. Keep it Jewish as much as possible. Now, if your name is Yoshua and you make it Josh, or Yitzchok and make it Isaac, or Avram and make it Abe, or Abraham, or Abi, or Daniel, you make it Daniel, or Moshe, you make it Moses, many commentaries say it's okay. Because that's the Hebraized or anglicized version of everybody knows what it is, That's what many commentaries say. However, there are guys that they go, let's say their name is Gershon, they become Gary, right? Or their name is Fievel and they become Philip. I'm not 100% sure, that's I don't know. So, but listen to what the Maram Shik said. He said something astounding. He says that better to pray by yourself in your own house. Even though you're supposed to pray with a quorum of men, 10 men, as much as possible. If you could do 3 times a day, we're not as fanatical as the Muslims do 5 times a day, right? We do 3 times a day, it's okay. I was once so ashamed. I think I once told you. Did I ever tell you this? I was in a conference once, and it was time for, I wanted to daven mincha, and I was stuck somewhere, don't ask, it was a crazy story. I was totally stuck, I couldn't get out, and I had to daven mincha. It's one of those really, really, really like once in a lifetime, extenuating circumstance. And I was with a bunch of, non-Jews, whatever, and I was really embarrassed. I was like, how am I going to pray mincha in front of everybody? They're going to look at me, they're going to think that, I'm like some insane person. They're going to call 911, and they're going to commit me to, an asylum. I don't know, I'm standing there. I can't avoid it. I get scared. As soon as I start praying, I start to shuckling, That's my aerobics for the day, it's my workout, So I go like this, and I get all into it, right? And that's my, so it's, listen, you actually work up a perspiration. You're supposed to, when you pray, there's two camps, there's 2 theories. One theory is that you're supposed to stand still. Right? Rav Pam Zatzal, also my Rebbe, he stood still, right? They stood still. Because you have such awe and such reverence that you're in front of the King of all kings, you can't even move, you're just still. And you're like the flame. Because our soul, when we pray, our soul comes out, and you're like the flame, and the flame is a still flame. The other opinion is, B'chol atzmosai tamarna, that with all your bones, all your limbs, all your viscera, all your fascia, all your anatomy, you're supposed to proclaim to God. It means you're supposed to get all into it, like woo, and all is supposed to get all worked up, and it's supposed to be all excited. So it means that, so the Hasidim, they go into like this whole fervor, and the more Lithuanian, they stand there still, right? So it's interesting because also it's brought down that at Har Sinai, the Jewish people, so they almost passed out, but it says that they started trembling. So some say that the trembling stayed in our genes, and that's why Jewish people, when they pray, they tremble because it reminds you of the Sinai experience. Can you imagine that? And because you see, Gentiles, they don't sway. They don't sway. And also, no animals sway either. There's no such thing as an animal sway. The only type of animal that's this elephants, it's called zoochosis, where they go ahead and they get anxiety, and that makes them sway. But there's no animal that decides that he's going to stop praying and he's going to sway. It's a unique Jewish thing, if you think about it. Unless there's another culture, ethnicity that does it, in the Himalayas or something, in Tibet, maybe I don't know about. But no, they sit there, they meditate, they don't sway. They're very, very still and in solitude, right? So we don't have zoochosis. We do it because our bodies are involved and because we're trembling like we trembled at Sinai. And some say that no, the flame could flicker. And that's our flame flickering when we get into it, okay? So now, listen to this. Marim Shik says that although if a Jewish person is supposed to go to Minyan, it's brought down, you won't believe this, which just recently said Rabbi Gamliel from Israel, from Eretz Yisrael, a great Kabbalist, he said that the Jew that prays loyally and faithfully with the Minyan will be spared, will not have to worry about the coronavirus. That's what he said. All right, that's pretty, listen, it's a pretty heavy statement to make, I met him actually once. I had a very interesting experience with him. I met him a few times, but Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky said that a synagogue where they don't talk during prayers, and listen, unfortunately, even in this neighborhood, there are a lot of places that I will not step foot in. Not because, God forbid, I'm antisocial, not because I'm not friendly, or not because I'm conceited and think that I'm better, God forbid. I won't step foot into these places because they're not like a movie theater. I like movie theater. What do you mean like movie theater? What am I talking about? You go to a movie theater and somebody says one word. What do they do to the guy? They beat him up, What do you? Shh, it's a movie, You don't talk during the movie. Lahavdil elf havdolos. You talk during prayers? You don't talk during prayers? No way. You're talking to God's here. You don't talk during prayers. So Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky said it's very, very dangerous. Because when they talk during prayers, if a synagogue they talk during prayers, the prayers can't go up. And there's only, God forbid, this curse. I was witness to a place like this, and the place, it actually burned down. And it's brought down. We're in a movie theater. Anyway, so...
Can you hear me?
In the library too, and they make
the library, you never hear a pin drop. You can hear a pin drop in the library, right? So you gotta be very, very careful. Don't go to a place where they speak during prayers. Don't go to a place. To be very, very careful. You have to be very, very careful. So now, it's brought down that it's very important to pray with a minyan. Very, very important. Yeah.
What if it's the only place you have?
So that's a totally different, discussion. It's private discussion. Well, I won't address that, but it's a very good question. Very good question. Very good question.
How do you know if the shul was built pure way?
How you don't know? That's the problem. You have to go to a place where you conjecture that the place was built purely. But listen what he says. As important as it is, as important as it is to pray with a minyan. You got to pray with the minyan. It's so important to pray with the minyan. And it's brought down that if you pray with the minyan, even if you are a sinner, then you get the benefit of everybody else. That's why it's so important to pray with me. Let's say that day, I wasn't batting a perfect RBI. I made mistakes. I spoke a little gossip. I didn't give tzedakah that day. I ate something that wasn't 100% kosher. I thought it was kosher, but it was kosher style. I don't know. So I go to shul, I pray. I'm praying for this and that. God says, you know what? You're going to be absorbed into everybody else's prayers. So if you're surrounded by some good people, you get their credit. Can you imagine that? It says, important is to go to Minyan. The Maharim Shik says that if that synagogue was built in the wrong way, he says, let's say they built it on Shabbos. Imagine. Now, there is a halachic exemption, by the way, to build a synagogue on Shabbos. If Gentiles are the contractors and they're building on Shabbos, then it's okay, according to some opinions. But if you go to a synagogue that was built through desecration of God, he says, better not to go there, better to pray alone in your house. That's what he says. Imagine this, is because everything has to be done with sincerity and purity. If it wasn't with sincerity and purity, it's no good. Now, even further, Reb Chaim Volozhin said that if you learn in yeshiva that was built out of desecration, let's say they stole money, or they did something wrong, or it was built on Shabbos, something like this, you won't believe this. You know what he says? He says that the walls are contaminated. And your learning is valueless.
What, they did it not kosher?
Whatever they didn't do it the right way. It shows you that the inception of something, how, a lot of people talk about karma and they talk about metaphysics. We're talking about the fact that this is it's sticks and stones, right? It's a building. What effect could that have? You don't see it. It's invisible. You don't see it. It's not apparent to the naked eye, but in the walls, there's actually an energy. And that energy could go ahead, and that energy could interfere with your prayers rising, with your Torah learning succeeding. Because everything from the very, very beginning has to be pure, and if it's not pure, it has effects. And that's why somebody asked me one time, he said, how could I be a good parent? I said to him, your parenting starts from the time you were a teenager. It starts much, much earlier, from the inception. You have to have purity from the very, very beginning in order to be a parent. It doesn't begin just when you have the child. Ramosha Feinstein says that if you have a siddur, a prayer book, that was published with impure motives by people that weren't good people, then your prayers won't be answered. You're praying from a prayer book.
Specifically, or the company, the distributor, or the book itself?
The book itself. Book itself. The Sefer Hasidim says that you have a holy book, but it was written by a wicked person. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
If you went off after you wrote it?
I guess, no, not after, but before.
So why would you read it?
The person doesn't know maybe. He didn't realize. No.
But we see in the Gemara that there were different people who wrote different things.
The mayors learned.
Yeah, and then later on they went off, and we still learn about them in the Gemara.
No, we're talking about, right, the book that they wrote, the book that they published. Now, I want to share with you a Gemara. Wait, Shlomo, you can't talk here. Somebody go out and tell him. He's not behaving appropriately. It's not. Okay. Gemara says in Pehei and Beis, it speaks about the man who's a hero of Israel. It says that he saved Judaism. Wow, you imagine that? That's a great title to have. The man who saved Judaism. And by the way, I want to tell you something amazing, okay? There are a lot of people that think that they're innovators and pioneers and things. When Cain, remember Cain that killed Abel? Remember him? Right? Cain, you know what he did to Abel? He disabled Abel, right? Unfortunately, it sounds funny, but Cain disabled Abel, right? So Abel had no descendants. Abel was killed before he could marry. He had no children. Cain had many descendants. And you know who Cain's descendants were? You had Yaval and Yuval and Tuval Cain. So Yaval was the inventor of genetic engineering, breeding. He took all the cattle. And until then, the cattle, they were only able to graze on one land. Because the people lived in caves. They didn't have tents yet. He invented tents, and now people were able to be industrious. They were able to go and take their cattle to graze on different lands. Because think about it, once your animal grazed on the land, and that's how they made all their income, there was nothing left for the animal to graze on. There was no more money to be made. So Yavel was a genius. He invented tents, and they became nomads, and they were able to go from place to place, and they were able to make a lot of money. And not only that, but he's also able to make animals reproduce on a faster rate. He did genetic engineering and breeding. Amazing. He won the Nobel Prize of his time, Yuval. Then you had Yuval. Yuval was another amazing man. Yuval was one that invented the wind and the string instruments, music. And everybody was able to enjoy music, and they were able to have a symphony, and they were able to have opera. They enjoyed life so much because of it. And then you had Tuval Kain. Tuval Kain brought to the world metallurgy, where he invented tools, and ultimately he also invented weapons. And the funny thing is that his wives, they were very upset that he invented weapons. They said, because listen, your grandfather, Kain, he killed his brother. We don't want more weapons. We don't want weapons. And the famous argument that he made according to Nachmanides was, people kill people, weapons don't kill people. Right? Which the NRA, of course, uses today. It's all from the Torah, thousands and thousands of years ago. All right? Weapons don't kill people. Weapons are inanimate. They can't do anything. It's the people that kill people. So Yuval, and Tuval Kain were the greatest pioneers, the greatest inventors of all time. And they won the Nobel Prizes of the equivalent of Nobel Prizes in their time. They were the ones that brought forth all the developments of technology, of industry into the world. So you'll say, wow, look what they did. They were amazing. Right? That's what everybody's going to say. Look what they did. On the other hand, you had Cain's brother, who was born 130 years later from Adam and Eve, and his name was Seth, Shase. And he was more into the values. He was more into the spirit, into the spiritual. Okay? And everybody looked at him and they said, it's pointless. What are you doing? You're helping with Wall Street. You're helping with finance. You're helping with entertainment. What are you contributing to the world? You're sitting there studying. You're sitting there learning Torah. What does that do for anybody? You're guiding and counseling. What does that do for anybody? You know what ended up happening? All these big pioneers of industry that brought all the inventions to the world, that made the modern world possible, you know what happened to them? Anybody know what happened to them? They were Cain's descendants. There was not one single remnant of them. They were all obliterated in the flood. Imagine. You hear Cheskel, you hear Josh, you hear this, amazing. All these people that invented everything, they were all Cain's descendants, they were all wiped out in the flood. Cain did not have one descendant. He did not have one descendant that survived the world. The only one that had a descendant that survived the world was Seth, Shase, who was into the spirit, and his great-great-grandson was who? Noah. And Noah and his children were the only ones that survived. Listen to this. It sounds like something that doesn't apply to us. The Germans. The Germans were renowned for all their culture. They were the most polished. They were most civilized. They're the most educated society in the history of the world that ever walked the face of the planet. There was nobody. You met a German, in 1910, 1920, oh, they were so suave. They were so sophisticated. They were so educated. They were so polished. And, they were so polite. And they had such finesse. You asked them directions, they would give you the most precise directions. And they would help you and guide you to where you had to go. And these people, the most educated people on the planet, the ones that brought all the new inventions and developments to society. All right, what happened? They were the ones that turned my ancestors and all our family. Even if you don't now. My family came here in 1919. So we're very lucky. But the name Fingerer is a very rare name. It's very distinct. Why is it so rare? Because it's my great-grandfather came in 1919. My grandfather came here in 1919. But the siblings, none of them left. They were trapped. And that's why the name Fingerer is not common. The only Fingerers that are here in the world are from that line. That's as far as we know. That's it. All the others didn't make it out. They were turned into lampshades and bars of soap. That's what the Germans did. They took the Jews and turned them, one out of every 3 Jews that walked the face of the planet, and turned them into lampshades and bars of soap. In the crematoria. Can you imagine that? Who did it? Not the Neanderthals. Not the, Bohemian, I don't know, whatever you want to call them. And not the savages. You're talking about the most sophisticated people that walk the face of the planet. And that's why, when I was making a life decision, what do I want to do with my life? I said, I can maybe become a brain surgeon. That's what I was thinking, maybe a brain surgeon. We're going to a certain type of industry, certain type of, career. And I said to myself, what's that going to do for the world? So I'll cure some people. I'll give a cure. But let me ask you a question. If there was a cure for cancer in 1939, would that cure for cancer have made a difference for the 6 million Jews that were killed? No. No. You can make all the money in the world. There were so many German Jews that had all the money in the world. And you know what? It was taken away from them. Every nickel and dime was taken away from them. And what does that show us? That more important than being a medical doctor, a surgeon, more important than making money, more important than making inventions, the most important thing in the world is to be the doctor of the soul, to bring values to the world, to bring morality to the world, to bring Kedusha, holiness to the world, just like Shais did and Noach did, because all the others, none of them survived. Such an important lesson. So Rabbi Chia in the Gemara, he was the hero of the Jewish people. 1 second, please. Sorry, excuse me 1 second, please. Just have to make sure. The Gemara says about him, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said about him, that he saved the Jewish people. How did he save the Jewish people? So let me show you what it says about him. This is a statement that he says. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar lo Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yonasan. Kol malamed es ben chaveru Torah. If you teach a child, not medicine, not technology, not engineering, not aerodynamics, not astronomy. If you teach a Jewish child, or it doesn't say, it says you teach any child. Somebody, you teach another child, not your own child. You give another child the benefit of a spiritual education, Zocha v'yoshe b'shir shemal, you're going to get the highest seat in heaven. Because you're building the character. You're building the integrity. You're building the values. You're building the spirit. That's the most important thing. The Germans didn't have that. They were shallow. They were apes wearing nice suits. That's what they were. They were in the guise of human beings, but devils. And that's what a human being could be capable of, unfortunately. And listen what he says further. Listen what he says. An amazing statement. If you take a child that never had a benefit of education because his father was a bore, or his father was ignoramus because his father himself never had a Jewish education, and you give that child an education, you know what? Even if God Almighty makes an edict or promulgates a decree, guess what? God will rescind that decree for the person who goes out and takes another child, not his own child, but takes someone into his hands and says, let me guide you, let me help you, let me cultivate you, let me develop you into a good person. Let me give you the benefit of a spiritual education. Because remember, it's not the other education that's going to save the world. Yuval, Tovu Kayin, all kinds of descendants, they had that. They gave everything to the world. They invented everything, and they didn't survive. Because they ended up thinking that's the strength and power of my hand that did it, and they didn't believe in the Spirit. And they all were decimated. The Germans, they destroyed the world. They destroyed society. So listen what Chia says. Listen what he says. How does he do it? He says, how do you build a generation? How do you build humanity? This is the biggest secret. I'm going to divulge to you now a secret that's priceless. Okay, I'm going to charge you an admission fee now, right now. Okay, how much are you willing to pay to get the secret of a lifetime? How much? You know what? I'm not going to charge anything. I'm not going to charge anything. You're getting now a priceless secret. Okay, don't fall asleep. Listen so intently, listen so carefully. Listen to the Talmud. This is the Talmud, the Holy Talmud. Listen to what it says on page Pei Hayom and Beis and Bava Metzia. How does Chia save humanity from falling into an abyss? From falling into an abyss, From falling into the most dismal, decadent, horrible situation of another Holocaust. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is what he says. Didi Minces, I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Azlina, I went, Vashadina Kisna. Now I know this sounds interesting language, but it's Aramaic. When I was applying for school, So they asked, how many language are you polylingual? And of course I put down, yes, I speak English and Aramaic. This Aramaic is Talmud language. So one guy has asked me, he says, could you please converse with me in Aramaic? I said, sure. Excuse me, I need the restroom, But anyhow, so he says that Azlina Mashita Kisna, I went and I planted flax. Flax. Why? Vigadilna Nishbi. And from the flax I wove traps. Out of the flax I made traps. What did I do with the traps? Visaidna Tavi. I trapped deer. Venison. Deer. Umachilina Bastrayu Liasmi. I took the deer and I fed the meat to orphans. Farichna Megilta, and then I went ahead and I made from the hide of the deer, the meat went to orphans to get them supper, but the hide went to make scrolls. And from those scrolls, what I do, I made Torah scrolls out of the hides that, remember, that I got from the trapping the deers, that I got from planting the flax. And I went ahead and I appointed 5 children, and each child to take one of the 5 books and to learn it. And I taught it to them. And then I took 6 children, and I taught them each the 6 orders of the Mishnah, of the oral law. And until each one mastered it, I was able to teach it to another child. And then I went ahead and I monitored their progress, and I saw that they were now teaching to others. And from this, he was able to take a humanity, a Jewish nation, that was deviating, that was veering away from any tradition, becoming total leftist, liberal, whatever it was, just sinking. No faith, nothing. Atheists. And from this, I saved the Jewish people. To the extent that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said that Rabbi Chia gets the medal. He saved the Jewish people. Ask the Maharsha, famous question. Why? Why does he have to go ahead and plant the flax, to make traps, to get the deer, to get the hide? And each hide he has to make the scrolls. Why doesn't he just go to the store and buy prefabricated, manufactured? Why all the effort? You know what he says? It's because if you want to succeed with people, it has to be pure. It has to be sincere. From the very beginning, it has to be authentic. Eventually people figure out who is putting on a charade and who really means the love that they convey. Are they just doing it because, they're emotional or because they have a need and that you're sort of like part of their need? Or they do it because they really have a love and really have a conviction and really have a passion and really have a sincerity. Said Rabbi Chia, the only way that I could save the next generation is if every element of those scrolls that they're learning from has to come from purity, has to be made with purity. From the very beginning, from the flax itself, has to be made with purity. Otherwise, it will be tainted. Otherwise, it will be contaminated. Otherwise, it won't be pure. Can you imagine this? Now, I ask you, think about it. There's nothing greater, there's nothing holier than raising people. They're giving people spirit, giving people faith, giving people hope, giving yourself hope. But how is it done? It has to be done with softness. It has to be done with sweetness. But it has to be done with emes, with truth, and with purity. And therefore, if you're going to take little kids and educate and teach little kids, it has to be done unadulterated. It has to be done without an agenda. It has to be done out of love, out of purity, out of sincerity. Even the beginning of it has to be done with integrity and purity to save the next generation. Could you imagine that if you go ahead and you teach someone and you give a person the knowledge that they need to succeed in life and to have good attributes and good character traits, then you could actually be stronger than God to a degree. Because God decrees something and you could tear it up. I mean, you know how powerful that is? You know how powerful that is? It means you reach out to another Jew that may not know something. You are the highest being in the world. The Chovos HaLevavos says, that's Rabbi Ibn Pekuda, he says, that when you give benefit of Torah to another Jew, then you are the most exalted person. You're higher than a prophet. You're higher than an angel. Psh, because you're giving them life. You know, you train somebody to be a technician. You train somebody to be a teacher. You train somebody to be, a mechanic. You train somebody to be a lawyer. You're not giving them life. That's not life. They can walk around aimlessly. They can walk around without hope. They can walk around thinking that, I didn't make that deal, life is over. That's not life. Giving a person the opportunity to connect to something higher, to believe in something, to understand that you're part of the greatest nation on earth, you're part of the most beautiful heritage, and you're part of a community, a family that always loves you and takes care of you, that's giving a person the gift. There's nothing greater than that. And that's why when you give that person a gift like that, God promises you, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to take care of you. I met somebody recently. This guy told me that he has 7 children. And he volunteers to teach unaffiliated Jews. This is what he does. He doesn't take a penny, he volunteers. He has another job. And he said to me, he says, I give it a lot of time. He says, but I made a deal with God. I said, God, I will take care of your children, those that aren't connected to you yet, if you promise me back that you'll watch out for my children. I said, wow, that was so beautiful. I was so inspired to hear that. Made a deal with God. Make a deal with God. Make deals with God. So that's why we go back where God says, you want to give me tzedakah? Make sure it's for me and not for anything else. Because if it's not for me, if it's corrupted, I don't want it. Because it's not going to sustain. Something's going to go bad with it. It's not going to last. Lee, do it for me. And remember, when you give, you're not giving, you're taking. You're not giving, you're taking. I'm telling you, you're taking. I gave somebody tzedakah yesterday and the guy said to me, thank you, like that. I said, but I only gave you $2. He says, it's not the money you gave me. I said, so what is it? He says, it's the warmth that came along with it. I said, what? He says, you know how many people I've asked for money and they're just like, he says, you think it's easy the position I'm in? He says, I tried. I had 3 jobs. I tried everything. He says, but I feel like I am just the worst person on earth, the way people treat me. He says, but when you gave me those $2, it's not the $2. It was the emotion, the warmth that came with it. The warmth that came with it. The Gemara says that if you give a person a blessing when you give them the charity, you get 11 brachas, you get 11 blessings in turn. Just by taking interest in somebody's life.
Now it says, give someone tzedakah, koneno avim. The guy likes you, the guy gets a lot of people's tzedakah.
It's true. But the Gemara says that you could test God with tzedakah. Give meiser. I spoke to a guy yesterday, I know him. Baruch Hashem, he became a millionaire. And he started off struggling, but he made a deal with Hashem. Every earning that he has, right away he takes a 10 off. Right away he takes a 10th off. And he's very, very, very successful. It says, Aser, tithe, b'shvil sh'deshasher, in order to get wealthy. Try it. Listen, you have nothing to lose, It's a great thing. And that's why, by the way, Aser and Osher, tithing, 10th, and Osher, wealth, is the same exact letters. All right, it just depends where the dot is on the shin. Is it a sin or shin? So it's a beautiful thing. But we should all always be in the position of only givers, and not to have to ever be takers. Hashem should always bless us that we should be always on the giving end, and we should never have to be on the receiving end. And we should always cherish and value the mitzvah every mitzvah that we have, every opportunity, because you know, and I'll tell you, I spoke just on Sunday. I spoke to the man who, with his own hands, he killed Nazis, and I encourage everybody to read his book. It's called The Youngest Partisan. He's still alive, thank God. He's around 90, 91 years old, and his name is Rabbi Rami Cohen. He was actually a contractor for many years. He built many homes, but he was also a Moel, a ritual circumciser, and I think did around 30,000 of those. They say he has the Guinness Book of World Records. And he actually circumcised some of my kids, actually. And at the bris, I said that this is the biggest privilege of my life. That the same hands that killed Nazis with his bare hands is now bringing my child in the covenant of Avraham Avinu, which is huge. And the faith that he has, the humanity that he has, is so special and so beautiful. And you contrast that with the Germans that had, all the knowledge. It doesn't amount to anything. It's not the knowledge, it's not that type of success that amounts to anything. It's the fear of God. It's the sincerity that will, God willing, help us succeed and build a world that shines, a world that's full of love and joy. Okay, thank you everybody for listening. We're going to have now another class and Hachont.